This is John Dooley, concierge golf professional extraordinaire, in conversation today with Jamie O Sullivan, head golf professional at Rosslare Golf Club, and we're going to be talking today about golf coaching, golf lessons, and just about anything about that for the next 20 minutes or so. Jamie, hello, how are you?
Hey John, how are you keeping? Good to hear from you and good to see you.
good to be seen with you. How's the weather in Rosslare?
Lovely and cold today. Snow on the way, I believe, but it's
lovely.
Just really cold.
Lovely. It's pure Melosian here in Glenmore. It is damp, cold, wet, sleety, and puke. Definitely not a day for out on the range, even if the golf courses are open, that is. Anyway, let's start. Tell us about Rosslare, what you have down there, and how you do what you do.
Oh, Rosslare is a beautiful little spot. You've played there before, John, I think, haven't you? It's a lovely little links golf course on the southeast, sunny southeast, even though it's not like that today. Mm-hmm. We have 30 holes of golf, all links, stretched out along the Rosslare Strand, and it's very, very nice. We have the main course, which is the old course, I suppose, 18 holes, and then we have 12 holes, the borough course as well. And we have some great practice facilities. We have a driving range. We have with 3 putting greens. We have 2 chipping greens, 1 pitching green with bunkers. Great facilities in all for everyone, you know. So it's very, very good.
Excellent. And what, from the coaching point of view then, what technological equipment do you have on site then for the various different bits that you do?
I work with video analysis and I work with launch monitors. I have the V1 video analysis software. I use the TrackMan as well for launch monitor and for teaching purposes as well. I have numerous training aids at the Explainer. I have different putting training aids from Visio, from Dave Pell's. I'm looking at a new putting software system, Capto, at the moment. Hopefully have that early on in the year. So I have a range of technology. Like to be quite honest with you, John, you can make teaching as simple or as complicated as you want.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with all the technology out there, it helps us as PGA pros, like yourself, you know yourself, it gives us the information. And then we have to do with that what we want to do. And I find the new stuff very fascinating. It's fact. It's 100% fact. And then we relay that in the simplest terms as we can to our students to help them. Like, you don't want someone who's not interested in the technology of golf, you don't want to give them too much information because they ruin them. But it just helps us to give them the feedback they require to improve them, you know?
Yes, yeah. And typically from coaching golf lessons as such, and that's very true, by the way. I mean, there's so much more accurate information. You can certainly talk about the different aspects of a particular part of the game, depending on all the various different things that you're doing with the person anyway, and what level they're at, how much information they can take in, and also the time they have to work on the various different things.
Absolutely.
What type of from the range of type of golf lessons that you offer? Which types of golf? Sorry, the range. What range of golf lessons do you offer? Should I say? Sorry.
Well, it depends on everyone. Everyone's a bit different. You know, you have some people who just want a bit of a fix. You know, who are kind of maybe 1 day a week golfer, and they want something just to help them improve. They don't want to put too much time into their practice. They just want to be able to play a bit better. You know, with those sort of people, maybe they might take one lesson every now and again. So I do individual lessons on different parts of the game, be it short game, you know, long game, putting, whatever you want. Generally, I find that, as you probably do, John, from a professional's point of view, one lesson sometimes definitely is not enough. You know, we don't. I suppose the art of teaching is to identify the few little flaws that the person has. But we know as golfers and as pros ourselves that one lesson isn't going to turn, you know, someone from playing poor golf into great golf. It's not that we want to change what they're doing in total, you know, in total, but we get used to a grip in a certain way, even if it's a bad grip. To change that takes a couple of lessons, you know, so it's embedded in properly and it's more comfortable for the person. So I generally find we might start off on one lesson, but we might do a series of maybe 2 or 3. I do then, so that could be, you know, short game or long game. I do lessons on the golf course as well. I do a kind of a package. I mainly do this during the winter series, the off-season period, where I kind of do a set of 5 lessons where we start off in the golf course, go out in the golf course for an hour so I can maybe see their strengths and weaknesses. Based on what I see in that day in our discussion, we go in, we design it maybe 3 lessons on the range or on the chipping green or putting green, wherever we feel is the most benefit. And then we'll go out and we'll try and implement it in the course in kind of 5th lesson. So that's when I do a lot of times during the winter season, because to be honest with you, it's time as well. It takes a lot of time for the individual and for me. And during the winter, I have a lot more time and I'm more flexible to be able to do that. I do a TrackMan series of lessons as well, where like the TrackMan has some great facilities and great features in it. So I kind of do a series of 5 lessons there where we maybe start off with a combine test, the test where basically the individual hits a lot of golf balls to certain yardages and targets. And the TrackMan, the combine test basically scores that person for the different yardages and distances and accuracy. And from that, we can see maybe the strengths and weaknesses through their long game and even their pitching and stuff like that. And based on those results, that we might do a series, we might do another 2 or 3 lessons. And what I see the flaws are there, maybe direction, maybe distance, maybe consistency, you just whatever you find in the day. In that as well, then I do, I try and do a lot of a session on distances as well. So, because it's very important, like everyone these days has a GPS watch or a Bushnell rangefinder or whatever. And it's amazing the amount of times you play in pro-ams or play with friends, amateurs, who haven't a clue how far they hit the golf ball. They're hitting a 7-iron where they should be hitting their 5 rescue, and that I suppose that's very, very important, that they know. So we do a session on that as well,
Yeah, I come across that too under clubbing. A lot of lads who come with under club and tend to never really give themselves enough a club to play, and that can be a big part of their. Again, that would come up during the game that you would do as well for the playing with them before, just that analysis about even those questions on the course about what club you played from X, and the shot might be hit reasonably okay, not too bad, ends up short, and it might be the puff, and because it's maybe not hit so perfectly, the wind might push it around or something like that as well. But even if you give yourself enough a club and you don't hit it quite perfectly, you're there, Yeah.
What I find in a lot of those lessons then, John, when we do those kind of combine tests, or even when I'm on the course with them, is that you see that they might be using a wrong club. They might have a 5-iron in the bag, and they might need a 5 rescue. Because it's amazing. People think they hit their 5-iron, say 180 yards, but it's gone 160 and ran 20. Whereas if they're going to a green that's surrounded by water with bunker in the front, they do need to carry it that 175, 180. I do a lot of playing lessons as well with people, which I think are very, very beneficial. 3 or 4 home playing lessons where I go out and I can see, it's amazing on the range. The mats do help people square up. And it's amazing you get to the golf course and all of a sudden a fellow with a big slide is aiming miles into the trees on the right.
Yeah.
It's a major problem.
Yeah.
Other things is how they're thinking on the golf course as well, John. You know what I mean? Like, stand up, right, where are you aiming? I don't know, just out there. They don't have a plan for the hole or that sort of thing. Where they get into trouble, they're taking 3 wood out of a light that you can only hit 9-iron out or something. Course how would you say? How they work. Course management. That's the word I'm looking for.
And again, how people think around the golf course completely. And I come across that a good bit as well. And that conversation about the PreChat routine, getting into it a bit more and practicing the levels of it. So and just working on aim, and just as you get better at it, I mean, it's never perfect at the start, but as you repeat it and get better at it and get better at it, you tend to have a lot less variances and it becomes a little bit more accurate. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah.
And it's something I see, like you could play with somebody and they say, oh yeah, I'm just hitting the ball terribly, but everything else is fine. And then you go play with them and you see they can't chip,
Yeah.
Or putt, that they're the most important things when you get close to the green, especially for the average golfer, and I include myself in that. Chipping and putting is so bloody important. And you get away with an awful lot because no one hits the ball well or straight every day. No one, not even the top players in the world, But I think it's very important that you get that overview of their game,
Yeah.
so that you can make a judgment, an informed judgment, so that you can help them better, you know.
It is, and that is a very, very key part of the playing process and the coaching process, as well as that. If golfers collect their, oops, look that there, we have to, hey, phone call. So, unexpected. Yeah, so we can take the phone off the hook. Anyway, so for the person who's watching this and they might be calling me, I do apologize. I will call you back in a minute. And as I was talking about there about collecting data and information, I mean, there's all different types of apps and tools that you can use to measure how far you hit stuff, which is fine. But to me, the key attributes then would be how many fairways golfers hit, how many greens you hit in regulation, how many putts you take, how many up and downs you have. And with that information, then if you have it over a trend of, let's say 4 to 8 competitive rounds, if you have that information over 4 to 8 competitive rounds, you can identify trends. And then also you can pinpoint the stuff about if it's short game, how far chipping wise, is it it can be the mental thing, it can be different things, it can be the range, it can be the whole process of it, it can be the
how many times, John, have you played golf and you went home, driving home in the car, and you go, geez, I thought I hit the ball pretty well today, and then you think, how many greens in regulation did I hit? And you kind of go, geez, I only hit 8, you know. It wasn't that good. It's not until you actually see the facts and figures in front of you in black and white that you actually can, and over a period of time really, and then you can really identify your strengths and your weaknesses, you know.
Yeah, and I like the thing about trends, because with the trending information, because also the other part, when you're driving home, you can be quite reflective on the part where you didn't perform as well, and you may practice that too much, and the part that you didn't perform as well might be your strength, where your weakness is still chipping, you're still putting, you're still having 30. We say if you're averaging 34 putts around, or 33 putts around, or 38 putts around, or you're just having too many scratches from blowout tee shots, and because it's important to get the ball in play and then score, and and trying to figure out, then identifying what part of that process is not working.
You often hear it actually in the top pros. You know, you'd hear Harrington. I heard him not so long ago. He was doing so much work in his short game, or no, that on his long game, that he neglected his short game. You know, and these are the top pros in the world. You know, so we do really have to learn lessons.
That was his famous line, I got so good at my weaknesses, my strengths became my weaknesses.
That's right. And like it's when you're looking at the average golfer who doesn't put as much time, or doesn't have the time to practice, or doesn't want to have the time to practice, they need to use their kind of practice time, you know, wisely, you know. And I would always say, John, that it's not how long you practice, it's what you practice. Like I remember as a kid, I used to spend all day hitting balls, and my geez, I only got worse and worse. You know that.
Listen, but it's very different than when we were practicing, because I think there was a mindset difference when we were growing up, because the best players never got any lessons, and also was that the club type that the best players used were the hardest to hit, and so I mean, you're walking around with clubs in the bag that were too stiff and that you could put under a car and jack up. There was no loft in the club, 6.5 degrees. You top it along the ground, and the club types and shaft types were too stiff or too heavy. I mean, I remember getting a set of Golden Rams, and there was they thought that they looked fantastic in the bag. I couldn't hit them to save my life. They weighed a ton, and I persevered with that for 6 months, and you'd shoot pukey scores and you kind of get it in play. But no, is that you either have the right launch, you either hit it get it up in the air, you'd have the right type of loft, shaft type. I mean, go through the irons. I mean,
like custom fitting is so important these days. You know, and I custom fit nearly every club I sell to members, and it's amazing the amount of members that come in for lessons. And their clubs are wrong. They're fitted their clubs, and the bag is wrong. You know, they're using, there's clubs in there they never use. There's a club in there should have. Very simply, they carry 3 irons and 4 irons. Oh, I love my 3 iron. I love my 4 iron. So I said, right, do a 4 iron for me. And then I hand them a rescue 4 iron. They go, geez, you know, it's amazing the difference they see.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I keep remember the days. I hope he doesn't mind if you mention. Remember Mark Ford and his one iron, his Titleist one iron. You can use it for cutting butter. You use it for cutting
Oh, they
butter.
could hit it though.
I know, yeah. He could hit it down the middle all the time. And
Yeah,
I mean, if you take that club out of your bag now, the head is almost as small as the golf ball looks as big as the club head.
yeah. But it's amazing the amount of golfers I get in, still high handicap golfers for golf lessons, and they're still using 3 and 4 irons. And they say they can hit them, but when you put them on the launch monitor, on the TrackMan, their 3 iron is only going the same distance as their 6 iron. You know.
Yeah.
But on the golf course, obviously we're in a links golf course here, so it runs out that extra 20 yards or 30 yards.
Yeah.
But they don't carry it far enough.
Yes.
So, and especially off the tight lies and the links that we have, it's near impossible to get it up in the air.
Yeah.
It's a myth, really. A lot of people think that the ball on a links golf course should be kept very low and running. You know, it's old-fashioned mythology, really. You know, with new technology and the science behind, you know, how the club and the ball works and how the ball works in the air with aerodynamics and stuff, it's proven wrong, you know, that the ball should be played on the ground. You know, it should be up in the air a lot more. You know, but people are saying that nowadays. You know, the evidence, and that's why I like kind of the TrackMan and the data it gives. It's evidence based. It's fact. You know.
What typical issues do you tend to come across with the various different golfers? For example, I know you're citing grips and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of changing the grip in most of the sessions unless it's really affecting ball flight. But what would be the typical things that you would come across when you're coaching?
It's basically fundamental. It's amazing, Doolers. I see huge amount of things starting with aim. And that's why I have a bay there, right? And I generally take everyone outside the bay and put them on the grass over in the corner and say, right, hit at that sign. And you'd want to see how much mostly golfers aim to the right. Right-handed golfers aim too far right, and they pull the ball back to the target, you know, with a kind of an overtop motion that causes a pull or a slice or that sort of stuff. That's huge at the start. Posture. Generally, people are really bent and hunched over and they can't move properly. So a lot of grip, I see a lot of, I'm not big into changing grip unless it affects how they swing it or how they hit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of grip falls, grips in the palm of their hands a lot. You know what I mean? Left hand strong, left in the right, which can be difficult to change. But I do it if I have to. But it's developing people to get them into that very simple setup position by, you know, good pre-shot routine. That's generally what I try and do. Like, to be honest with you, Doolers, 20 years ago, I'd say I hope this doesn't go out too far and wide, but I owe everyone I gave golf lessons to in my first 10 years of teaching. I owe them all a refund because I suppose we grew up in the day of Ledbetter.
Well, you know, I'll do my best to share this with everybody in Charleville, in Galway, or in Burkbarnock.
Yeah, Galway and Dublin. When I got to Charleville, it was better. I learned the vital lesson. I'll tell you about that in a second. It was the best lesson I ever got, actually. I was in Fota. We just opened a new golf academy, and Brian Keller and myself, Brian's a great friend of mine, we were the two pros there in the driving range, and we were given the Junior Cup golf lessons for the teams at night time. And so everyone was in the new highfalutin, brilliant teaching studio.
Yeah, it's a fabulous spot, yeah.
Brilliant. And we put them all up on the video analysis, so we're all standing around, and generally it was posture or whatever. So this fella stood up, and Jamie big wallet, we'll call myself, stood up straight away. This fella was ripping it. I mean, is way better than I could. Can't remember his name. I remember him swinging it, phenomenal swing. And there I stood up, and your posture. And Brian turned around, he put a hand on my, just stand back there, you. He goes, well, it's definitely not your long game. It must be your short game that we have to work on. And I was there going, well, he's dead right. The ball is just doing exactly what he wants. It's phenomenal. You know, why would you change that?
Yeah.
Let's work on your short game. So what I learned from that was there's way more than, you know, one way to swing a cat. You know, you look at the phenomenal golfers that have played all around the world, the Furicks, the Damon Darcy's, you know, you look at nowadays, even the funky swings. You know, you don't have to swing the club perfectly to be a good golfer, but generally what they do have is good fundamentals, you know. Their aim, their ball positions, how they stand to it, simple stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And as I say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
You know,
The beef would be a good example for that, though.
it's what the ball does, Doolers, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, isn't it? And how consistent it is.
And yeah, as to if your repetition, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be good, and a good fundamentals, good repetition, and the other parts for them would be the different types of approaches that you'd have to the course, and try to keep that consistent. Because when you're consistent with stuff and there's a decent process, there's much more likely you're going to repeat the same process. And if you're confident in your process, you're much more likely to have better outcomes rather than erratic outcomes. And
I think it's planning shots as well, Doolers. You know, and it's teaching people through the kind of pre-shot routine how they should be thinking over a golf shot as well. You know, it's amazing the amount of people don't allow them to think positively over a shot. You know, they're afraid. And I'd be saying, lads, look, you think about this shot in your own mind like you're the best golfer in the world. You don't have to tell your playing partners.
Yeah.
If I stood up in the first tee every time, so I'm going to stick this down the right side with a high draw, I told it to my playing partners, you're putting loads of pressure on yourself, and you sound like you're not you know.
When it's in the trees on the left, the each comes out.
Definitely, probably would be. But you have to think that way, though, Doolers. You know, you have to think positively. You have to think. You have to plan your shot. And you don't have to go into, look, this doesn't have to take time. It's a very, very simple thing. You look at what you're trying to do. You pick the club that you think is best for it. You make a practice swing or two, you know, thinking that's the shot I want to go. In, bang, done. You know, a pre-shot routine should be very, very simple. It should be automatic, like driving a car. You get in, you do it. You don't even think about it, you know.
Yeah. So it really is. I mean, we're identified there with golfers with misclubbing. We're talking about the mindset around the golf course. We're talking about trying to be more. I come across as about being more consistent. More consistent comes from consistent process, but at the same time, sometimes there needs to be some type of a point of how do I become more consistent, and that is by going through coaching. And it is getting the fundamentals. It is getting the practice swings. It is going through the motions where you got good finishes and work on the impact area, different parts of your game. It's not the same as everybody else because everybody's different. Everybody's different. It's not the same.
And I think that comes from when people come from for a lesson, John, we have to, as pros, identify their flaws by chatting to them and watching it and see where it is. And then making them understand what the flaws are in very, very simple terms. You know, I use a lot of alignment sticks, and I do a lot of demonstrations so that they understand how their club and club face and ball are interacting and why the shots are happening. You know,
and also as well, since you
show them very simple stuff, you know.
Yeah, and also from using V1, the camera, where you can show people at the start how they move and how the different things are, talk about the different things that we'd like to change, the results of that. And then after a half an hour, an hour's practice, then showing the differences before and after. Now, sometimes they feel that there are monumental movements and changes, and it can be quite subtle, but it's similar enough to bigger kind of things that you need to work on. For example, like you come across a person who doesn't quite finish the swing. And after this, and I'd find that after working on getting through it a lot better, you can certainly see a more unified, connected type of swing the way through. So you can see the speeds of everything kind of going through together. So that'd be an example of how good video can be. And I would always recommend, if you can at all, you are for golfers getting lessons to use video when possible. It's just I find it a very easy tool for people to understand. That's one of the feedbacks.
And it's all about seeing is believing.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing the amount of times I take out my iPhone and I take a picture of my client or my whoever it is, and I say, right, that's your posture. You look like an old man. You know, I'm going to take years off it. You know, and we get him into the right posture, which feels terrible. You take a picture and you show him the two, and he'll go, all right, now I believe you. You know what I mean? Seeing is believing, because we don't feel what we're doing is wrong. It feels comfortable to us. It feels right. When we change a person, it feels terrible.
Yeah.
And us as golfers, we know that, John, because we've had plenty of lessons down the years. And it feels desperate. And you have to get used to that feeling through a bit of practice. Like there's a big process from getting a lesson, understanding it, being able to apply it in your practice, and then bringing it out on the golf course and trusting it on the golf course.
Yeah.
And like that's part of the journey that the golfer has to go through.
Yeah.
So like I know when I was a kid, I practiced totally wrong. I practiced on the driving range. You know, I thought, yeah, the more hours I spend on the driving range, the better I'm going to be. And it didn't work because two reasons. Number one is when you get onto the golf course, it's a totally different mindset. It's totally different. You know, all of a sudden you have one ball, one shot matters. There's trouble everywhere. It really matters where you put that ball. On the driving range, you hit a crap shot, you can just pull another ball and hit it. You know, there's no pressure in you. Another thing is when you get onto the golf course, you have to trust what you're doing is right. And it's amazing. Your body, a lot of the times, doesn't let you trust to do it. So you revert back to your old habits. I ask a lot of my customers to spend a small bit of time, if they had an hour to do their practice, maybe split it half an hour on the range, half an hour on the course playing a few holes, because I like them to implement what they're doing on the range onto the golf course, you know, through a routine as well, you know, always built by routine, so that they can literally, it's automatic, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of the coaching process would be going through the session, getting the information, and then working on it, and the time that's available to the person to work on it, because the time is one of the critical factors now, because there's so many different things that are going on that influences how you do what you do, because a lot of the time we'd all have fabulous ambitions to, I'm going to play lots of golf this year, I'm going to play practice, but then just different things get in the way. No, I have nowhere to go this year, so less of an excuse not to be practicing. Is there so for golfers that come to you in Rosslare, between members or not, or just golfers in general, is there local places to practice in the area as well?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of golf clubs around Wexford. So, like, obviously we have 5 or 6 golf clubs in around Wexford town within 20 minutes drive. So a lot of people are either members of the golf clubs, or we have a driving range. The driving range in Rosslare is open to the public as well.
Right.
So they can come up, they get tokens from the pro shop or the bar, and they can use that. In Drina, there's another driving range. And then there's a host of kind of par 3 and pitch putt courses around Wexford as well.
And contact wise with yourself, is it dead easy to contact you? What's the best, or what would be the best platform? Is it telephone, social media?
Put me in the pro shop.
Yeah.
Rosslare, and 053 9132 032.
The good telephone.
Or you can get me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those.
Yeah, and I'll pop those underneath the video here, so people can contact you that are living close by, or if anybody wants to come from wherever for a trip for the weekend, could all get a complete golfing weekend with Jamie, and as well as Instagram. So you got this Jamie's Gems. I love the brand Jamie's Gems. I mean, it's a nice, and I've seen a couple that are pretty good as well. So I would encourage people to follow you on Instagram as well. So Jamie, let's wrap it up on that. There's tons of information on that, and thank you very much for your time. And we'll get a game again soon, I'm sure.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, Jamie.
Nice to talk. Take care.